Hey, this is Sahil. You're listening to the Studio 21 Show, where I walk and talk with the people that are designing the Bitcoin products that all of us use every single day. Today, I'm talking to John Magill. He's the founder and CEO of Zaprite. He also does a lot of the design, actually all the design work at Zaprite. Previously was a freelance graphic designer, has a graphic design background. He's a good friend here in Austin, and it was just really fun to learn more about him. I had a bunch of questions that I never really asked. So as always, this is a good opportunity for that. So hope you enjoy. Join me on my walk and talk with John. Yeah, thanks, John, for joining.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, this is really fun. I mean, we've been friends for a long time.
Yes. Yeah. A few years now, I'd say. Probably since when I first came to Austin. In 2021. Yeah.
And that's when a lot of us came here at the same time, right?
Yeah.
It was like me, you, Carmen. Well, Carmen was there a little earlier, but there was a huge wave of people, and it was fun.
And a huge influx from Canada as well. That was like the exodus coming from not just like people from New York and California within the US, but like overseas as well. Yeah.
And some went to Mexico, right? Like I think there was some in Mexico and California, New York. It was just crazy. But I've always known you part of Zaprite.
Yeah.
For a while, it was basically a one-man show, I think. Right?
Yeah.
I'm assuming you worked with the contractor and things like that. But
yeah,
as far as I know, you always did the design for that.
And still do. Yeah.
You still do. Okay, so I have so much to ask there because I've never even asked you these things, so I'm kind of excited to learn about that. But I feel like you have really good OPSEC because I couldn't find anything about you.
Yeah.
In terms of like your history or like quote unquote career.
Yeah.
So like whatever you're comfortable sharing.
Yeah, I'm happy to share all that. No worries. I'm glad you said about the OPSEC because I didn't put a huge amount of effort into it, but I definitely thought about it a lot.
Yeah.
And
because you don't have a LinkedIn.
No, I scrubbed all my social media and deleted them years ago.
Yeah.
Not for OPSEC reasons, but more so like kind of partially for that for sure.
Yeah.
But more so because I just thought it was like brain rot. It was just like it was just like a disease. It's just like a mental disease. Being stuck on social media all the time. So it was more of that. But actually, it's funny when basically one of the main reasons that got me thinking about deleting all the social media as well was that, and this is kind of part of my backstory and everything as well, which I can get into more detail about, but I was freelancing at the time, freelance graphic design, UI, UX type stuff. And at the time, it was years ago, probably going on a good like 6-7 years ago, maybe. I can't remember exactly when, but like, I think I was earning like $50 an hour or something is what I was charging my clients.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember getting stuck on Facebook one day because I always had to do these like different things for clients. And sometimes it would involve like setting up Facebook pages for them. And, you know, if I'm building a website and a branding presence for them, like I'd have to do all that stuff. And so I'd open Facebook and then like an hour later, I'd still be scrolling Facebook. Or like, and I'd just be like, oh man, this is such a time suck. Like I don't get caught in this trap, like, you know? And I realized myself one day, I was like, well, if I'm charging $50 an hour, and that's my like productive capacity, and I get sucked into watching Facebook for an hour, scrolling on Facebook for an hour, then essentially it's costing me $50 a day to use Facebook.
Or an hour, I guess. Right?
Or, well, if I spend an hour, it's like, it's $50 I could have earned working, right?
Okay,
so I just kind of looked at it and went, man, Facebook is costing me $50 a day.
Yeah.
And when you think about it that way, you just like, you're like, holy shit, like I need to get rid of that. Like, that's just like, that's just madness.
Yeah.
So like, that was one of the things, but yeah, so I ended up scrubbing all of my social media. And then when I came down to Austin in September 2021, I never told anybody really anything about myself.
Right.
Bar, like I'd tell a couple of personal stories and that, and you know, I'm from Ireland and lived in Canada and blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. But nobody knew my last name. Nobody knew how old I was. Like I was just known as John Zaprite or like the Irish guy or whatever.
I was going to say, I've always known you as John Zaprite.
Yeah.
And even now when I was
people sometimes thought it was my last name.
I know, because even now when I was like writing your name on my little Notion stuff, my instinct was like John Zaprite, and then so it's just
it's funny. And so for the longest time, I never, and again, it wasn't really I was going hard, like you know, trying to have the perfect OPSEC or anything, but I was just like, oh, I'll just like you know, I'm starting somewhere new. I just won't tell people.
Yeah,
I'll be selective in what I share, and I thought it was going well until I went back to Ireland one time and I was like chatting with this guy. He's a friend of mine now, but at the time, like we didn't really know each other. We just met because he was starting up a meetup, a Bitcoin meetup in Dublin.
Mm.
And I was like, oh yeah, Zaprite will sponsor your meetup. Like send me an invoice. And he sent me an invoice and I had my name on it. And I was like, dude, like, where'd you get my name? And he goes, oh, I just Googled John from Zaprite and it popped up on some website. And I was like, oh, Jesus. I was like, okay, right. Well,
Oh,
there's no point in me trying to do OPSEC anymore. So
yeah.
it's out there somewhere. But yeah, for the most part, like when you Google me, there's like the only things you're going to find now are just Bitcoin and Zaprite related.
Right. Okay.
Which is fine.
So, but you said you were freelancing,
Yeah.
but even before that, because
Mm.
I'm sure people are curious, like, because you can't just wake up and be like, I'm going to be a freelance designer.
Oh, no.
What was like day one, or like what was day zero, I guess?
Day zero was like my birth.
Okay,
Because I
fair
pretty
enough.
much, I'm like kind of half joking, but what I mean by that
Yeah,
is like I've been drawing and like doing art stuff since I was like a young kid. And even my parents like recognized like a talent in me at that young age and kind of pushed me in that direction. But like I do weird stuff like when I was, maybe like even like maybe 4 or 5, as young as that, I'd be drawing these like really detailed pictures and caricatures of Disney characters like Goofy and things like that. And they'd be like really like, detailed, like well above like kind of age group for what I was at the time. And then as I got older, I remember it was like 7, 8, and 9 and stuff, I'd be designing golf courses and I'd be like drawing like these huge big like every like detailed hole on the golf course and where the bunkers were going and the trees, and like I had this like design mind of trying to like build things and
it's like
design them
architecture
and
almost.
yeah, kind of. And so I've kind of always had that since I was very young. And then when I went to school, I mean, I guess for the first kind of 7, 8 years or whatever, when you're in, I mean, we call it primary school, you guys, what do you call it again? Like
Elementary school.
elementary school,
Yeah,
maybe.
elementary,
And
middle
yeah,
school.
yeah.
Yeah.
Before you go into like high school and later years.
Yeah.
So that was kind of just normal. But then when I did go into high school, secondary school back in Ireland, I had an art teacher. Like you could pick your subjects, right? I don't know if you guys have the same thing here, but when you're like 12, 13 and you go into like those last few years, you get to pick all the subjects you want to do.
Yeah.
So I dropped all the sciences and picked all like art
Whoa.
and engineering and things like that. And so I really focused on art. And I had like this really great teacher, Miss Houlihan was her name. And like she recognized in me as well from like early on that there was like a lot of talent in there. And like we would do like really cool projects. Like she would even kind of like go against the rules of the school and let us paint big huge like murals on the wall and stuff.
Oh, wow.
Like during class and stuff, so we could just kind of let loose and do like crazy things. And I remember one day we got this like there was a big huge pillar, like 4-sided like stone structural pillar in the middle of the art classroom, and 2 or 3 of us basically spent weeks during every class and sometimes coming back afterwards, like painting this big mural on all 4 sides of like Oasis, like Liam Gallagher and Noel Gallagher and stuff. Like it was just like, it was really cool. I remember it just being like a really fun collaborative project. But then my teacher was kind of like, all right, like, you've got a talent. I think you should go and, I'm going to put you in contact with a bunch of these colleges, like art colleges throughout Ireland, and you can go and visit them and, get a feel for all the different programs and things they have. And so I did that from, I think I was like 15, 16, whereas normally that wouldn't be something you would do until you're 17, 18 and you're just about to like leave and you're applying for colleges. So you go to all the open days, but she kind of pushed me to do that a couple of years earlier. And at the time I was doing more what she called industrial design. So I was designing a lot of products.
Physical
like,
products, right?
Yeah, like physical products, like hardware. I was designing like stereos and like computers and like video game consoles and things like that, because that's what I thought I wanted to do. And then I went to one of the top art colleges in Ireland for one of their open days, and I just ended up walking in through the graphic design department, and that was just a complete eye-opener for me. Like I saw all these amazing posters on the wall with all these like all this Swiss typography and all this like really cool shit. And I was like, oh, that's what I want to do. Like I want to be a graphic designer. And so I kind of switched my focus then for the last, like, say, 2 years of school, and then really started building up my portfolio then. So that
Wait, do you feel like that was because it was more on the art side compared to maybe product, which is more, maybe it was more quote unquote problem solving? Or what do you like?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the industrial design side of it is, you still get some creativity and stuff and building displays and like button sizes and where you want things to go. But a lot of it is kind of functional.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think that, like, to be honest, I didn't even think too much about what made me switch. I think it was just like an aha moment. I just walked into the graphic design department and saw what they had hanging on the wall and just went, oh, this is cool shit. I want to do this.
Yeah.
So I don't think it was a conscious decision. I think it was more
Like a gut.
Yeah, it's just a more gut instinct of like, oh yeah, I like this, I want to do this. Yeah, so I basically just spent the next year or two like building up my portfolio and getting it ready for applying for art colleges and stuff. And then I went through 4 years of art college in Ireland.
Hmm.
The first 3 years was pretty much traditional art school.
Yeah.
So, the first year was all about learning kind of like every different discipline. We did like old school photography where you're like developing in like chemicals and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Did, a lot of art history, did color, texture,
Wow.
typography, like all of that stuff. We kind of like dug deep into like kind of everything. And then year two was more, yeah, year two and year three was bigger. You kind of like, picked your discipline and went kind of deeper in one angle. And then I ended up doing a fourth year, which was an add-on. They called it a multimedia degree. So it was like an add-on, which turned my diploma into a degree. And so I ended up coming out the other side with, I think it was officially called a degree in design with multimedia,
Mm.
I think is what it was. Yeah, I mean, I guess that was up to, the age of 22, whatever.
By
Coming
the
out
way,
of,
so that kind of related a little bit of a tangent, but someone else who I didn't know had a similar background, or not similar, but
yeah.
graphic design background, which is last episode, Stephen Delorme at Voltage.
Mm,
So he's
mm.
like a UX engineer type. Like he
Yeah, I
codes,
know
he's a
Stephen. He
designer.
was there at the
Exactly.
takeover in the Pleb
Yeah,
Lab startup day
yeah, he won the
last week.
hackathon.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. He won the hackathon.
he
Yeah,
won the
what
hackathon.
was
So
it? Doom something.
yeah, it was
His game, I think it was called. It
it's
was
like a
cool. It was
Bitcoin
awesome.
shooter. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
and he won. But yeah, he also has like a traditional graphic design background, which is, at least in my experience, what I've seen is most designers that come into product design, I don't think the majority of them have a traditional quote unquote design background. I think many come from like computer science or English, or
Mm.
at least just from what I've seen. So it's
Yeah,
just
yeah.
interesting. Like I didn't have a traditional design background, so
Well, yeah. I
you
mean,
see
it's
that.
it's very interesting because there's always that question of, is design in your DNA or can you be taught
Whoa,
design, right?
interesting.
And
Yeah,
that's like, designers debate that all the time. Like, it is like, can you
is taste
like,
innate, or is it?
yeah,
Can you
like,
learn
is,
taste?
not everybody has, I mean, most people have terrible design skills, right? You
Yeah,
ask
yeah,
most people to design something and it's like, graphic designers joke about it all the time. Like, they'll pull up Microsoft Word and do
yeah.
just place word art and clip art
Graphic
everywhere, and
design is
it'll
my
like use
passion.
20 different fonts and like all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So like most people have absolutely terrible design, but some people are kind of born with really great design.
Mhm.
And so the question is, well, can you transition somebody from bad to good?
Yeah.
Or is it something where you have to have at least some kind of, signals in your brain that are sending you in the right direction, and then you can like refine it and fine tune it as long as you practice it over
This
time.
is so fast. I want to get back to this later because there could be something to talk about there when it comes to AI tools, right? Because it almost feels like
Yeah.
there's a difference between the skill of knowing how to use the tool to do something versus just having the taste to be like, I can recognize what is good.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, yeah, we should definitely get back to that because there's so much to think about there.
Mm.
But what I wanted to
Yeah.
ask was like, so you spent all this time in school, graphic design, like foundational things, colors, type, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then years later, now you're building a product. How much do you feel like that directly translated, or was it maybe more just a foundational thing that's just part of your core now? Or what do you think? Hey, just a really quick break to tell you about the Studio 21 newsletter. If you're interested in Bitcoin and design, every month I highlight a few key pieces of Bitcoin or design related news or education. I think you're really going to find it valuable. So if you're interested, take a look. Go to sahilc.com/newsletter, give it a subscribe, and look forward to seeing you there. Now back to the episode.
I don't know. That's I think it's kind of definitely like my background definitely helped get me where I am today with Zaprite and like being a founder and running a company in a couple of different ways. One was, I mean, the origin story of Zaprite. Like, I can talk about that a little bit, and
Yeah.
and that kind of like directly leads into it. It was basically when I was living in Canada, I'd been a customer of Bull Bitcoins. I'm sure most Bitcoiners will
Yeah.
know about Bull Bitcoin. Really amazing exchange, like just probably one of the best out there. Was Canada only, but now they're kind of branching out. But I was a customer there for a long time, and I'd been introduced to Bitcoin in 2013 and kind of been lurking in the background for years, and then dabbled in like shit coins and 16 and 17, and then 2018 kind of came out like a hardened Bitcoiner. And I was trying to figure out some way that I could get involved. And I wasn't a developer, so I couldn't, do PR reviews or like review any of the code or anything like that.
And you were design freelancing at this time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was living in Canada at the time. I'd moved from Ireland over to Canada. Was living there, just freelancing, some Irish clients, mostly
Mhm.
Canadian clients. And it started off as just being graphic design, mostly for print, because I'm old enough that that's all there was before the internet came along. But actually, in fairness, just when I came out of college, like in early mid 2000s, it was like the internet was starting to become a thing after, the whole dot-com bust and all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
So I came out of college and basically just started teaching myself HTML and CSS just so I could kind of offer it as another service to the clients that I was doing the 2D traditional marketing and print stuff for.
Yeah.
And then that kind of developed into building WordPress sites and then like using kind of like template builders and things like that.
Mhm.
Then I taught myself PHP so I could actually custom design full WordPress themes and then build them out fully myself and everything as well. So, I did have a kind of coding background, but not like I would never have called myself a developer. And then, so I was at that point where I was trying to figure out what can I do in Bitcoin. This was like 2018-ish.
Mhm.
And one weekend, I just decided to take out like Adobe XD
Mhm.
and do a full prototype mock-up of a
Yeah.
new design for Bull Bitcoin.
Ah.
And I basically just randomly shot a DM over to Francis, like CEO, on a Monday morning and said, hey, long-term customer, love your product, but your design needs like a lot of work here. It's something I've done over the weekend. And he loved it. And they ended up hiring me as like UI UX to kind of redesign a lot of their stuff and help them with some graphic design and things. So I started working for them in 2018 and was getting paid in Bitcoin. And I needed some way of, creating an invoice where I could get paid in Bitcoin because, they're a legit company. They needed a proper invoice, all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
And there really wasn't anything out there. I was running one of the original Casa nodes, one of the original
Yeah, I
like
remember
node in the
that. Yeah,
box.
yeah.
I ended up trying to run BTC Pay on that, like kind of hack it together, like 2018, 2019. It was like it was tough. And, you're trying to expose ports and do all these things. Like it's obviously, you know, it's come along a long way now in the 6, 7 years since. But back then it was very hard to configure it all. And I was like somewhat technical. Like
Yeah.
I just couldn't get it. So I ended up just using their BTC Pay server, demo server. So I always had this idea of like, man, there should be an easier way to do this. Like I should be able to just like connect my existing Bitcoin wallet to an invoice and
Yeah.
just get it paid. And then cut out all of this stuff like, hey, we're going to pay you now. Is this address still valid? Yeah, okay. Is this price okay? Like, yeah, okay. I'm happy with that price.
Yeah.
That quote seems
Yeah.
okay. Like, here's the conversion rate. And so that's how Zaprite came along. It was basically just this MVP where I decided to kind of just build something that I always had in my mind. And I think it was like COVID. It was the start of like 2020 when all that hit and everybody was kind of locked down and stuff. And I was like, all right, well, this is my chance now to go and actually try and build this product I've always had in the back of my head.
And
And
when you
so, yeah.
started with that, was that did you start right away with like building a web app, or did you have like a hacky prototype, or like how
So I
did you?
started building it in PHP
Uh-huh.
because that's all I knew,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
But I was still working with Bull Bitcoin a little bit at the time. Or I can't remember if I was still working for them at that time or not in the middle of 2020.
Mm-hmm.
But I knew Nate and
Yes.
like was good friends with Nate. And so I kind of reached out to him and I said, hey, look, I have this idea. I'm trying to build it. Can you give me some advice on, what tools I should be using? And he's like, oh, no, you don't need to build that on PHP. You want to go React, Next.js, like
I
all this.
love Nate.
And
Oh.
yeah, Nate's just amazing.
Yeah.
So he's basically been there from the start. He built the framework. He set it all up. He got everything wired up. He set up Next.js. He got it set up on Vercel.
Mm-hmm.
Got me, up to speed with using like VS Code and hooking everything together and, building it in React and JavaScript and stuff. I basically just kind of like rolled up my sleeves and said, all right, I got to learn React and build this thing out myself.
Oh, so you learned all that,
So I learned all that and I built the first version of Zaprite.
and this is pre-AI,
Yeah,
pre-Claude.
yeah.
Wow.
Absolutely. Now it was complete spaghetti code. It was garbage.
Wow.
But it was enough of an MVP that like, there was a few hundred users. Like it was great. Like there was a lot of people like checking it out, using it. I don't know how many active users now we had, but like a ton of signups and people like pinging for feature requests and everything all the time. And then of course, when I got down to Austin in September 2021, everybody was like, oh man, you got a really good product here. Like this is cool. Here, let me introduce you to this VC or that VC or whatever. And, then I sat down with the guys at 1031 and like, got to know Marty and Matt and stuff and went for a pint of Guinness with Marty and told him all about the idea. And, he loved it. And, from there, I ended up like raising a small pre-seed round, which then allowed me to hire a full-time developer.
And you were still doing design.
I was still doing all the design.
And did it always kind of look like the way it looks now, or has it kind of evolved like the
It's kind of looked
visual
very similar.
design.
Like even if you go back and look at the first version, it's
Yeah.
still very much the same.
Wow.
Same font, same color.
Yeah.
We maybe tweaked the green like very slightly,
Slightly, yeah.
but we basically just used Mantine, and
Mhm.
so we didn't really change a lot.
Oh, that's the UI. That's
From
the UI.
that's the
Kit,
UI,
right?
yeah. It's
Yeah,
kind
yeah,
of
the UI kit, yeah.
there's a lot more out now. I think a lot of people might prefer like Tailwind and
Yeah.
different things, but
Chatsian or whatever. Yeah.
yeah, I just recently heard about that. Nate's put me down that rabbit hole, so I've been looking at that. Yeah, so it's always kind of looked almost the same, but very much with a focus on, minimal, clean design. And I think a lot of people like comment about that, saying like, it's one of the most well-designed
Yeah.
Bitcoin services apps out there.
It doesn't feel
because-
like a janky Bitcoin product that a developer just
yeah,
threw together, which is nice.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess it's kind of funny because developers will obviously work faster and they'll build their product faster, but it might not look as good as probably wouldn't look as good as what a designer would do.
Yeah.
But a designer can't build the product. So, like, if they're on their own, it kind of goes a bit slower. I was kind of in that lucky position where I had somebody like Nate to lean on and get me started. I had enough experience and enough of that inquisitive attitude to be able to go, okay, I can teach myself to code and I can build this MVP. So it was kind of unique in that sense, in that I was kind of like playing both roles for like a year or two.
Yeah.
But then as soon as I said, raised the pre-seed money and got the proper developer, like, oh my God, that code is like, so I can't even read it now.
Yeah.
It's like completely different.
But I mean, I guess to your point, for like people today, if somebody has an idea, they could prototype it out probably way easier or way quicker with a lot of modern tooling, and then get to that point where you raise on the idea and the prototype, and get an actual developer to.
Well, well, that's the thing, because like a lot of people, well, I mean, there's different ways you can raise money. You can raise money by having an absolute like killer idea that like just excites everybody, and they want to like throw money
just
at
right
you,
away,
and then they'll figure out how to build it, because you can build anything, right?
Mhm.
Or you can, like this whole joke of like going to VCs with a pitch deck, right? Some people are raising millions with just a pitch deck. Sometimes if your idea is that good, like a pitch deck is all you need, because ultimately, ideas by themselves don't form a company. It's the execution and who's behind it and who actually builds it and who brings it to life and, and guides it. But there's a bunch of different benefits and some disadvantages to the way, different companies are started and things like that. But the point I was getting to trying to make all this is that like I actually had a functioning MVP with, a good few users who are actually using it on a daily basis. And, we're seeing volume go through it, albeit small at the time, but it was obviously proving that there was a need for it.
Yeah.
Now, how big that need was, that was the question that I guess most people were, or most investors at least, were going to ask. But yeah, at least I was coming to the fact that like coming to the table with a working MVP with users, which is sometimes a lot further than a lot of people.
Oh,
have
100%.
at that stage,
I kind of feel like, because I've been struggling with this, and I talked to Steven about it in the last episode too, is just how much of the actual building does it make sense for a designer who maybe isn't naturally inclined to do that. And I'm curious what you think, but my gut reaction, which is evolving, is like you should be able to do enough to build that MVP prototype, especially it's not that hard these days. But I still feel like there's a separation of responsibilities that makes sense. Like if I'm designing and building and learning all the weeds of like modern frameworks and like how to optimize the code, it just doesn't seem like it makes sense for one person to do all that. I don't know. What do you feel?
It definitely doesn't if you're trying to build the perfect framework and you're trying to build a solid code base to last you for years to come.
Yeah.
If you're a solo person doing it like I was, you've got to realize that you're probably building something that has a shelf life of 12 to 24 months max. You're really just building an MVP to get it going. You can't do both.
Yeah.
If you're the super coder and you can build a code base that's going to last for 5+ years. I mean, I don't know any code bases that last 5+ years. They probably all go through rewrites that, after that time frame. But at least if you can build like really solid code like that, chances are you're not good on the design side. And so you're going to need another person to come in and refine it. So no matter how good it is and how well you pitch the VCs, they're going to say like, okay, well, you've built a working product. This is great, but like you need to go and pay someone $100,000 a year now to like build a UI for this and do like whatever. So yeah, like I said, there's advantages and disadvantages from each side, but I think this all kind of started from your original question, which was maybe, if I remember correctly, was like how much of my past being a designer helped in kind of get me to where I am right now.
Yeah.
And I think it's played a huge role because well, first of all, I built a product that I needed for myself as a designer, as a graphic designer.
We can turn around, by the way.
Now, it could have been for any product, like any freelancer, whether they're like a photographer, a developer, a musician, like whatever it was, like the product would have worked for anybody. It just so happened that I was a graphic designer and I needed that type of freelance billing product.
Yeah.
So that's one aspect. And then, yeah, the other aspect is, we're both designers. We understand the real importance of good design.
Mm-hmm.
And I think having that from the start, it gives your app just that little bit extra legitimacy.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when you can design, the nice marketing graphics to go along with it, the slides that get popped up on Twitter and that type of thing. When people see that, they kind of think, I've had a lot of people come to me over the last year or two, and they think Zaprite's a big company. Like,
Yeah.
I think there's like 30, 40 people working for us. It's like, no, it's like up until like, Parker and Will joined, and then Nate recently, it was just me and Tom.
Yeah.
Just me and my developer and friends.
That's insane.
Like, that was it. So
and it's interesting because it seems like recently there's a rise of more of these design founders. If you think about Linear or obviously
Yes.
Airbnb, there's a lot of these companies that are design led.
Yeah.
And so I think you're an example of that, which is great. I want to see more of that.
Linear is amazing, by the way.
I mean,
it's just, it's our number one app. We use it every day in Zaprite.
I wish I did. At Foundry, we use still Jira Maximus.
I've never used that. But yeah, again, it was Nate, I think, that put us on the track to Linear, and we just haven't looked back.
Which, by the way, for anyone listening, Nate's was at Unchained, now was at Zaprite. I think he was at Bull Bitcoin before that. I don't know.
Yeah, so he started a company called Verify in Canada, in Montreal, which was a Bitcoin onboarding like concierge service where you buy and help you custody Bitcoin. They got bought by Bull Bitcoin. So Nate went working there, and then that's how I was freelancing actually for Verify. As well in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
And when Nate obviously moved over to that whole Verify team, moved over to Bull Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
So I continued working with them and Bull Bitcoin. So I've known like Nate for probably 5, maybe 6 years at this time. I can't remember exactly. But,
and we'll get him on the show soon.
Absolutely. He's just a wealth of knowledge, like phenomenal wealth of knowledge in so many areas. Like such a brainy, articulate guy, but just has a lot of passion for, those people who are just like super passionate about like everything, and it kind of shows in their conversations, and
he's always so
happy
cheerful
to share
too,
knowledge, and he's so cheerful all the time. Yeah, exactly.
Actually, kind of related. What's it like? Because we both worked with Parker, we both worked with Will.
Yeah,
guy was at Unchained, at Zaprite for you. What I remember the most about working with Parker is he has the most incredible like attention to detail.
Yes,
and any little thing,
unbelievable. Yeah,
you can't get past Parker.
No, it's
So I mean, what's that like working with Parker? Obviously, there's a lot to say about Will and Nate too, but
I mean, obviously everybody has their own unique skill sets that they bring to the table. But Parker, for sure, I mean, everybody knows Parker as the guy on Twitter who wrote the articles gradually and suddenly, and now he has the book, and he's been on podcasts and does presentations and talks and stuff. But he obviously as well had like a successful career at Unchained, head of business development at Unchained. So, getting somebody of that caliber to work with me at Zaprite, it was just like phenomenal.
Yeah.
And, that all came about because ultimately Parker had the same problem that I had, which was once he kind of transitioned out of Unchained, he was looking for something new to do.
Yeah.
And Will together. And Parker was, he was writing his book. He knew he was going to put his book on sale soon. He wanted to start selling pre-orders. And he just wanted to connect his wallet like through Xpub and get all the money coming straight in. And there was no tools out there to do that. And well, there was Zaprite, but like, he wasn't aware of it.
Yeah.
And so he was talking to everybody at the time, being like, "Yeah, this is what I want to build." And everyone's just like, "Just dude, John's built it. Like, just go check out Zaprite." So, they obviously looked at it and saw, okay, this is kind of, this is almost exactly what, himself and Will had envisioned for their new startup.
Yeah.
And so they basically just joined because it made sense to kind of join, and all three of us put our heads together. So again, that came from, Parker's need that he had for like a really solid, like, professional Bitcoin payment solution.
Yeah.
But that was geared and focused around self-custody.
Mm-hmm.
And so like, I mean, he obviously joined Zaprite in that same kind of position as head of business development. There's obvious clear advantages there. He has a huge network. He's well known. He's got a reputation. So, that has obvious benefit for Zaprite, but also, like his attention to detail, and he's just a hard worker. Some people, like, very quickly when you start working with people, what they're like. And you could tell, like, when you work with Parker, he's just Like he's dedicated. He's
Well, I just remember like even when he was writing the book, he would agonize over like every detail. Like he would show me like two options of the font of this or that.
yeah,
What do you think?
yeah,
And for most people, they would just be like, "Doesn't pick one of them, fine." It's like it's good. But he would
yeah,
agonize over every little like centimeter of the book cover, and
yeah.
yeah. So I
Well,
imagine
because
that translates.
he has that ability to think of the second and third order effects of things,
That
right?
is
So like
true.
most people
That's
wouldn't
true.
be like, oh yeah, pick what font, like whatever, who
Yeah,
cares?
yeah,
But he's like, well, I want to make sure I pick the right font so
yeah.
that one, it sends the right message for the
Hmm.
content that I'm trying to portray, but also it has to be legible and readable and all
Yeah.
this type of stuff. So, he's thinking about those second, third order effects. But yeah, same thing, like when he writes proposal documents, because like we're always talking to other Bitcoin companies, whether it's exchanges or wallets, trying to get integrations done or, some kind of partnership about some new feature we're trying to build. And we'll talk about it. And then, a couple of days later, Parker will come back with like a 20-slide presentation
Yeah.
that's like so in depth.
Yeah.
And you can tell that like he's obviously spent a lot of time not just putting it together, but
Hmm.
thinking about it in the lead up to that.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. It's great to see how,
Yeah.
how his mind works and how he works and how he's able to get content out.
Yeah.
So, which seems so effortless, but obviously it's honed and trained over time.
Yeah. And then going back to like the attention to detail
Yeah.
piece, and also tying into like the AI conversation, it kind of feels like Parker may be an example of where someone who has taste and is able to identify what's good or not good, but maybe doesn't have the actual like tool set to be like pull up Figma and do it. So maybe there's a world where these kind of people are able to just communicate using English to these tools and be like, give me this. Oh, actually, that's not good. Because like Parker can be like, oh, that's not good. This is good. I want this.
Yeah.
And if you can just say that in English, have you played around with any of this stuff? Like these new,
Yeah, I mean,
even going super new, like Lovable or V0 or any of these things? Hey, just a really quick break to tell you about the Studio 21 newsletter. If you're interested in Bitcoin and design, every month I highlight a few key pieces of Bitcoin or design related news or education. I think you're really going to find it valuable. So if you're interested, take a look. Go to sahilc.com/newsletter, give it a subscribe, and look forward to seeing you there. Now back to the episode.
I've played around with a few tools, not in any great depth.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
first iteration, the first thing I tried was like 6 months ago
Yeah,
when I tried V0,
yeah.
and I gave up very quickly. But in fairness, looking back on it, I think I had the wrong concept of what V0 was. Like V0 apparently is a really great component maker. It'll make beautiful design components. You tell it what
Mhm.
component you're trying to make, it'll do it.
Nice.
But I thought it was like going to spit out a full project for me. So I was describing this project I wanted to build. It was a multi-page project. It had like, API routes and different things. And as I was going through it, it just kept spitting out new files. And I was like, oh, this is great. Okay, now it's building this page. Okay, now it's building the API routes. Like, this is great. But then I'd look back and like none of that would be available. I'd have to like scroll all the way back up and copy, and then I'd have to go into VS Code and create a new file myself and like paste it in. And so I had the wrong idea of what V0 actually was. And so I kind of like gave up disappointed. But I've since been told I was using the wrong tool and doing the wrong things. But like the other day I was using, is it bolt.new?
Yes.
And that was crazy. I tried the exact same project again
Mhm.
that I was trying 6 months ago. And within like 3 minutes, I had 90% of what I wanted.
Or even like
And
Replit. Like Replit,
yeah,
it
I've
has all
never
the
used
hosting,
Replit, but yeah.
deployment, everything is there. It's like,
Well, that was the other thing when I was using V0 as well, is like I got so far
yeah,
and then I was kind of stuck because I was like, well,
what do I do?
where are all my files? Like,
Yeah.
what I've been asking it
Yeah.
to do stuff for like 40 minutes. Like,
Yeah.
where's all my files? And then I was like, okay, I'll just hit deploy.
Yeah.
And it will go to Vercel and I'll have it there at least. And then I can have like a GitHub repository and I can pull it into VS Code and work with it. There wasn't even a deploy button. Like
Yeah.
6 months ago, they did. I believe they might have it
I think
now.
I
but,
think they
like,
might now.
6 months ago, I couldn't even hit deploy to Vercel, and it's a Vercel product. I was like, oh man, this is crazy.
It's shocking how fast this
Um,
stuff changes.
Yeah,
But it's also
so-
interesting because you have such a limited time. I would imagine you would have a limited time to even play around with this stuff. How are you thinking about? I've been curious about this for a while. When I found out that you were original designer, you're still doing the design.
Yeah.
How are you doing that? Plus also doing CEO stuff. There's a lot of stuff that CEOs do.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff. Like, there's always things that can occupy your time if you let them.
Yeah.
You have to, especially as your company grows and you get more popular and more users, and people become more interested in you.
Yeah.
There's a lot more things that can that can absorb your time. So you have to be selective and just kind of be careful
Yeah.
about what it is you do. But luckily enough, I'm not at the Jack Dorsey stage or something now, right? Where like
Yeah.
literally every minute of your day is
Books,
precious.
yeah.
I've got time to like do certain things.
Yeah.
But like I really love design. So, sometimes if a new feature needs to be built or we're planning something for Zaprite, I love just opening Adobe XD and just going in and spending a couple of hours messing about with design. I don't ever think to myself like, oh, how can I work with some AI tools to like make my life
No.
easier? I mean, maybe it'll get to that point where I need to do that. But like right now, I just love design so much that I'm happy to go in and
You want to be in the
tinker
weeds,
around.
yeah.
But like to answer your previous question about, like somebody maybe like say Parker who has this attention to detail. Yeah, I mean, maybe AI is going to be great for those type of people to be able to say, well, because a lot of times Parker will be putting together like some kind of proposal document for like some company we want to like, pitch on some idea or something. And he'll just hit me up on Slack and be like, hey, I need 3 screenshots. Like, can you mock these up for me with
Yeah.
this, and this? And then I'll have to do that. Whereas like, I imagine that's something like AI could probably knock out, right? We could probably train it on our design, give it a few screenshots of Zaprite, like, and then tell it like, hey, yeah, go and, Parker might need a new page for something that we don't currently have. I'm sure AI could like whip that up in seconds, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's something where I think somebody, Parker, especially with his attention to detail and knowing, like thinking 2-3 levels deep, knowing exactly what he wants, being able to explain that and articulate himself in such a way that AI could pick it up like pretty quickly. Because like, prompting it's tricky at times. Like you gotta get it right, or like especially one of the things I'm learning now is that I've been using Cursor. That's
You
probably the
have?
thing. That's probably the thing I've been using the most. Again, not to any huge degree.
Yeah.
But it's the one I would use to get like deep into the code base, because like I said, it's the code base right now is like it's heavily typed. Like our lead is dev, who was the lead dev before Nate came on CTO, was like passionate about TypeScript. So everything is heavily typed. Nate's the same. TRPC for like the API routes and things like that.
For the record, I don't know what any of this stuff means.
I don't know really what it means either, right? So I was building very basic React JavaScript for the first version. Like I said, hired proper developers and they basically just like rewrote the whole thing. So now I have very limited knowledge about how things actually work.
Yeah.
But I've been using Cursor a lot because it helps me kind of get through a lot of different things. Like for example, I might have a user maybe hits me up. Like a good example, I'll tell you what a good example is. We had a customer recently who basically they were using our recurring invoices feature. And we released that not too long ago, and we were releasing it slowly to different people who were, interested in using it. And then we released it generally. And then we had this new Bitcoin company that like started up and they were using it. And we heard one day that like some of their recurring invoice emails weren't going out monthly at the end of the month when they schedule their emails. So we were like, damn, like what could be like some of them are going out, some of them are not going out. Like what's going on there? And so I was able to go into Cursor and just be like, hey, what happens like when a recurring invoice is being sent out? Tell me what happens. And it's like, oh yeah, so this API route is hit here, and then it goes through this, and then it goes through that, and then it goes through your rate limiting. And then I was like, okay, it could be our rate limiting. And we had like a 50 emails per minute rate limit on anything that people try and do in Zaprite. And this person was trying to send out 70 or 80 recurring invoices every month. So like the last 20 or 30 were getting blocked. And it was like, oh, okay. So that type of stuff like Cursor is, is really great for me to be able to kind of dig through the code without having to like bug Nate or Tom and figure out like, okay.
I can see designers or PMs using that too, right?
Yeah.
Asking these questions.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's great for that. Like Cursor's really good for that. Like figuring out how your code base actually works without having to, annoy a developer about it.
So a little bit of a pivot, but related to this point about this, you shipped a feature and then there was some reaction to that.
Yeah.
How do you, if at all, think about like usability testing or research after launch, or even before launch, obviously research, but like you ship something, how do you test anything at all before shipping it? Or is it just like...
Oh yeah, definitely. Everything we do gets QA'd like before. Now, depending on the feature, it'll be very light QA or it'll be like very heavy. Like some features we've spent weeks QAing before we release because we got to try and catch every single aspect.
And that you mean like internal testing, not
internal testing, but then also depending on the feature, it'll normally be if a user requests it, especially if it's a big feature like that. Like I say, we're not going to do it, but I'm guilty of, as the founder and the CEO, and it's like my company, I want all the bells and whistles.
Yeah.
So when a customer asks me for something, I'm like, in linear creating a ticket going, yeah, guys, let's go do this. And they're like, how many people are asking for this?
Yeah.
This is a massive change to our code base. Like, do you really want to? And like, a lot of times I just get shut down and they're like, no, we're not doing that. I'm like, oh, okay, fair enough.
Nice.
But when we do things, it's because a customer has asked for it,
Mhm.
and it's a pretty big customer or it's a pretty big feature that we know will benefit other customers.
Mhm.
So a lot of times what we'll do is we'll spend weeks, if not months, building it. We'll do a lot of QA internally, and then we'll just feature flag it and switch it on for that one customer.
Yeah.
And so they'll use it for a few weeks or a couple of months and give us feedback. And then eventually, when we're happy with that, we'll open it up to like maybe, on a request basis, some more
Gotcha.
customers
Yeah.
before actually like pushing it live in general. Other small things we'll just push it live
Just
straight
push it,
away,
yeah.
and sometimes won't even do any testing because we know it's such a tiny, minute thing. But for the most part, yeah, everything gets QA'd.
And it's also such a small team that you can probably make changes. And it's not the scale of Facebook
Yeah,
billion users where you can. Gotcha.
yeah, exactly. Like it's not, we don't have tens of thousands of users, so
Mm-hmm.
it's easier. Like when, if something does break, usually our error logging and stuff will catch it, and we'll know before
Yeah.
it gets to too many people. So yeah, we're at that stage where we're small and nimble enough that we can get features shipped quickly.
Yeah.
And we generally kind of are all available to jump in and do like a lot of kind of QA before we do ship these
For
features.
sure.
So
for sure.
like it's a good state. Obviously that will change as the company gets bigger and things
Yeah.
like that. But yeah.
And it's
for
interesting
sure.
because related to both linear and what you talked about, okay, customers asking for this feature. There was this article that you were there, ABDC. Maybe you showed up after this. I don't remember. But last Design Club, Nate was co-hosting. And one of the articles we talked about was this piece from Linear.
Oh yeah.
Were you there for that, or I don't know?
I think I came in right at that time,
Right at
but
that
Nate
time.
had shared that with me earlier in
Yes.
the day.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
So
it's
maybe we
pretty
should
cool.
just explain. So yeah, so basically that piece was talking about how you find the balance between literal customer asks, like, "Hey, I want this thing. Make this
Yeah.
field for me," versus how do you balance that with like vision and taste and intuition and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And they were basically, Linear was basically explaining how they think about it, which is, what did they say? It was like intuition, like honed by customer feedback or something. So it's just really amazing. I think.
It's really amazing. And a lot of the times as well, like you gotta like sometimes you gotta ask yourself, which Nate is good at this, and especially our lead developer Tom. Sometimes you gotta say to yourself, if your customer is asking you for that one field,
Yeah.
they're like, I want this field here. Can you build it for me?
Yeah.
You might be tempted to do like, oh, okay, yeah, I think we can do that. Like, let's go ahead and do that. But often the more beneficial thing to do is go back to the customer and say, well, why do you want that field there? What
Yeah.
is it you're trying to do? That field would like, you think that field would like enhance your experience. And sometimes they might tell you something where you're just like, well, that field is no use then because,
Yeah.
you need this feature over here.
Mm-hmm.
And then you start to realize, okay, well, we need to build it a different way to solve the problem. Because sometimes it's just a problem that the user wants solved,
Mm-hmm.
but they'll tell you, I want this field here because they think that's going to solve their problem.
Yeah.
But ultimately, you want to try and ask, okay, well, look, what is your problem? And then we'll try and solve it because we know our code base. We know,
And because if we literally just added that field, and this is what the Linear guys talk about, is like if we literally just did that, maybe you only solve the problem for this customer, but not for the rest of like. But
Yeah.
if you find a more generic way of solving it, maybe you can solve it for 80%. Because I'm even thinking at Foundry, like that's something we're going through right now. Like one of these new features we're thinking about was a customer asked by one of our biggest clients, something about reporting. Big client, big minor. But how do we generalize that to everyone? And so that's what I'm trying to think about is it's the same thing. It's because you want to be like a consultant basically, or not a consultant, but like a feature. I don't know what you call it, but it's like, we're just taking customer asks and we're just building it and shipping it right away.
Yeah.
You know,
Essentially, you're just like a consultancy for updating your own app. Like, it's, you want to avoid that because it's a hard thought process to get into, especially like I said, if you're a founder and CEO and it's your baby, it's your product.
Yeah.
And if a customer comes to you and they're like, hey, I want this.
Yeah.
Your automatic instinct is, no problem. Like, I'll build that. I think we can do that. But so many times I've said that to customers. And then I've gone back to the dev team and they're just like, no, like we're not doing this. At least we're not doing it that way.
Yeah.
It has to be done another way. And because that involves refactoring like 4 other like areas of our app, it's going to be 6 months before we can get that. And I'm like, I've just promised the customer we'll have it by the end of the week. And it's like, oh, damn. So I've been learning to kind of, hold my enthusiasm back a lot
Yeah.
and just try and kind of explain things in a
Yeah.
efficient manner to the customer and try and get more information out of them and try and figure out, okay, what is it you're trying to do?
What do you actually want?
Yeah, what do you actually want? Because this is how our app is built right now.
Yeah.
If we want to change this for you, we'll have to adjust a few things. So if you can explain what you want like a lot better and clearer, we might be able to do something more efficiently or quicker for you. And they understand that as well. They're like, a lot of times they'll be like, oh yeah, cool, no problem. Here,
Yeah.
this is what I'm trying to do. And they'll send you screenshots of where they get stuck or what it is they want, or they'll explain their system to you. And then you're like, oh, okay, I see what you're trying
Exactly.
to do.
The way I think about it is like the customer's job is to tell us what their problems are, not like the solution. It's like, tell me what your problems are.
Yeah.
And then our job is to figure out like what is the
Exactly.
how
And
do
I think
we-
that's what that whole linear article and stuff like really kind of like leaned on and was
Yeah,
good for. And yeah, it's definitely a dance.
yeah.
You're trying to temper your enthusiasm to
Yeah.
support everything that the customer throws at you
Yeah.
with kind of this base reality that even though we're a small team and we're nimble, that also means that if we do something, it's going to suck all our resources until that thing is done.
Exactly.
So yeah, it's a balance. But
Yeah.
I mean, I think we're doing a good job. I think we're punching above our weight.
Yeah.
I think we're providing a product that is like really kind of head and shoulders above any other Bitcoin payments platform. And I think we've got a very unique approach, like this whole idea of doing the connections and allowing people to connect any wallet they want. There's nobody else really doing that.
No.
I think that will like stand to us in the long term, even though it's a lot of work now. It's very valuable work. And I think there's a lot of things we can build on top of that in the future.
Yeah.
That will really kind of set us apart even further.
Gotcha. Okay, so we're kind of getting to the end here, back home, and then I think we'll probably head back to the Commons, or I guess it's now Park Austin, but
yeah, Bitcoin Park Austin, yeah, or maybe they're trying to shorten it to Park Austin.
Maybe Park Austin, yeah, it's gonna have to make that mental switch. But I'm wondering, do you have any? I like to ask this because I think it's kind of fun.
Yeah,
and you don't have to, but do you have any like hot takes, like design hot takes? You've been doing this for a while, and you've worked with engineers, you've done design yourself. Anything that's like mainstream that you're like, I don't know.
I don't know if I have anything jumps into the top of my head. I mean, I can rattle off a few things. I don't know if they're necessarily connected to the question too much or not, but one of the things that I was kind of like really surprised at and try to avoid is this whole idea of collaborative design. Especially like when you have a Figma file.
Yeah.
And you've got like it might be okay if there's multiple designers, say in a team working off a Figma file, but when you have a Figma file and say like the CEO or the product manager's in there and he's pulling things apart and moving things and like I want to vomit. I'm just like, no way, like get out of my Figma files, get out of my design files. It's like it's not happening. There's that. And then I don't know, like the whole AI thing is like super interesting. It's
actually, hold that thought real quick. You're going to the Commons, right?
Yeah.
So actually we can just directly go there.
We can walk straight there.
Yeah, rather than going to my place. And
the whole AI thing is super interesting because it's, you know, AI will be able to do like a hell of a lot. It'll be able to do a lot. It'll be able to build interfaces, you know, especially if, you know, you have somebody who knows what they're doing at V0 and not me.
Right.
They can actually build some like really nice UIs, especially if it's just an MVP, like it gets it up and running like in no time. There's a lot of templating stuff. There's scripts you can write that'll automatically like spin up Next.js templates and like different things, and they'll do a lot of the heavy lifting. So that whole debate about whether AI will take designers' roles and stuff, especially when it comes to front end, you know, in back end stuff, I was talking to Nate about this the other day. It's like back end stuff, there's still a lot of stuff that happens in the back end that I don't think AIs will ever fully be able to get the context for.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that still applies front end if you're a really good designer. Like if you're just somebody who like mocks up some stuff in Figma, like, you know, you're probably not going to last because,
like if you're just using a
AI
UI,
will just take that. If you're using a kit, right?
A
like
kit to just be like, oh,
it's like, hey, I want like,
if you're pixel pushing, it's like,
it's like I want a landing page designed. I did a lot of projects I used to do when I started before all of these tools became available. It was like, hey, John, I want a landing page. I would design something. I put some dummy content in, and then you have a back and forth with the client, like, oh yeah, so here's the text for that paragraph, and maybe can we swap this image out, and can we do this? All of that stuff will be gone because, like, you know, there's already like, you know, landing page template sites have been around for a decade or longer. And then the AI part is just going to automate all of that, and the content generation and the photography and, you know, just the image generation, like all that kind of stuff where it's like, oh, I want this particular type of image. Like, all right, well, now we don't have to pay $1,000 for a photographer to go out and do a shoot for a day. We can just get AI to generate the image.
Honestly, now that I think about it, even my personal website, I'm paying Framer $20 a month. I could probably just build it myself in Lovable or something.
What's
Yeah.
Lovable? I haven't.
It's
like,
one.
heard
It's
of
one
that
of those
before.
like bolt.new v0
Oh,
type
okay.
things. Yeah. But I should try that. Okay, that'll be a fun project if I can not pay this $20. Well, I guess I'll be paying $20 for something else, maybe hosting or whatever. But
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
okay,
That's,
kind of again tangent. Maybe just to close things out.
mm.
I'm curious, like, what is next for Zaprite? Not as a business, but more as from a design point of view. Either Zaprite or you personally. It could be maybe something you want to learn or get better at design wise, or could be something from like the CEO point of view where you're like, I just need to hire a contractor or like to offload some responsibilities. Like, what's next for you or Zaprite from like a design point of view?
It's funny because like I kind of had this chat, similar kind of chat with Nate recently on this as well. Is that we're looking at Mantine.
Yeah.
We're like, okay, that's kind of restrictive.
Ooh.
Our code base it's grown over time, and it's kind of getting a little bit harder now to like enforce consistency throughout the app because like this was the other thing as well. Actually, when you're talking about like any hot takes on design and stuff, it's like when I first started building Zaprite and I was learning like React and JavaScript, this whole idea of like JSX, like CSS and JavaScript, I just could not understand it for the life of me. I was like, this is absolutely bonkers. The whole idea of CSS was that you remove the styling from the content and you had it in one centralized location where you
Right.
could manage everything. And then now all of a sudden we seem to flip back where we're writing individual, very specific, unique CSS for every module we're building.
That seems nuts.
And it seems like absolutely like ridiculous. Now I know there's different like platforms and stuff that kind of help with that, right?
Yeah.
And then CN apparently is really good because you're actually pulling the modules like into your code base and you can like edit them and have more kind of consistency around where they're being used and what they look like. But to me, that was one whole thing where I was like, this is ridiculous. Like this is just the stupidest idea ever. Like CSS should not be in your JavaScript at all.
I see.
And so we're kind of learning that now with Mantine.
Yeah.
There's things like emotion and stuff like that help with that. Tailwind, I think, probably has become popular because it's just using classes and you can keep your CSS like abstracted outside of that. So yeah, going back to your question, like that's something that we're kind of like discussing now. Well, do we want to, because our Mantine is going to need like a probably a serious upgrade at some point because there's kind of breaking changes to go from 6 to 7. And so we kind of have decisions to make like, okay, well, do we want to,
maybe you just switch,
like just switch to like Tailwind or something and like CN and like figure out some like different approaches.
Yeah.
And, if we did that, that would probably require us hiring a designer. Because I would not take that on as CEO. I just couldn't do that. So that would be like something where we'd have to be like, all right, now we need a designer. I got to step back from that role. So yeah, there's a lot of things that are always up in the air and discussed. And how can we optimize? How can we like plan for the future? But yeah, I mean, we've managed to get as far as we have now with just me as pretty much part-time designer.
Yeah.
Which is great. Like it's interesting for me too, because like I love running Zaprite. I love having all of these different things that I'm responsible for and doing and, traveling and going to conferences and doing podcasts, things like this.
Yeah.
And then also being able to jump back into the design every now and again. So
yeah,
it's great. But yeah, as we grow, I'm sure that'll change and we might need a full-time designer at some point. And
I don't know how you do it, man, but it's amazing. It's amazing. Yeah, man. Well, this was fun.
Yeah.
I feel like I say this almost every episode, but it is true. It's like we have to do a part 2 or something. There's so much more to talk about.
Oh yeah.
But we're close to coming up at the park. So yeah, where can I guess people find you? I know you said you're not like super social media heavy, but I know you're on Twitter. Or X,
Twitter's
whatever,
X is probably the best place. I mean Zaprite.com for the website.
Yeah.
At Zaprite app on Twitter, and then I'm just John JOHN _ Zaprite on Twitter. That's pretty much it. Like hit us up on Twitter if you want to get a demo of Zaprite, if you want to get on a video call with myself or Parker, and you want to, see how Zaprite can help out. Yeah. Fill out the contact form on our website or hit us up on Twitter or something and we'll get back to you. But yeah, that's pretty much about it.
Dude, thanks, man. This is fun. Yeah, we're going to continue our walk for a bit and then head back. But thanks for coming and thanks for listening. Anyone who's listening.
Yeah, thanks for having me as well.
Sahil.
It's been great. It's been nice to get out in Austin and get some sun. I think I'm well too overdressed for this.
No.
1 or 2 in the afternoon in Austin wearing a sweatshirt and jeans. So
a little warm, but
yeah,
we're almost back home. So all right, peace. See you next time. Okay, that's it for this walk and talk conversation on Bitcoin design. Hope you found something interesting from it. Hope you got some interesting nuggets. If you liked it, and if you want to, feel free to give it a review, share it with someone else who might find it interesting. And genuinely, if you have any feedback, I really, really want to hear about it, positive or negative. So find me on Twitter at SahilC0, and I look forward to seeing you next time.